Welcome to Conversations with the Planets, a podcast with Lori Kaufman and Alicia Cielle Heiser that roots the wisdom of the stars into our lived experiences here on Earth and weaves the power of diverse healing modalities together with astrology. And today we're going to be talking about the new Taylor Swift album and particularly the myth of Cassandra and how it can show up in an astrological chart. So, hey, Lori, how's it going?
Hello, it's going good. All right, yeah. I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan. Don't know if we've said that before. But when we were listening to the first go through of the album when it first came out that night, there's a bunch of songs if you've listened to the album or if you're familiar, you know that there's a ton of songs at the end of the album that just have people's names. And a lot of them are like Peter is Peter Pan. There's speculations that Robin is Robin Williams. And there's a lot of other people that are mentioned throughout the entire album. Um, but Cassandra was the one that kind of made me freeze because I was like, who is this about? And when I started listening to the lyrics of it, um, I was like, this sounds like the Greek myth. And I froze for a second because I was like, well, why would Taylor be talking about this Greek myth? But then I realized Cassandra, just like all of these other women that I've been finding lately, had something in common, which was that she had prophetic dreams that people didn't believe. And once I read that and realized that's just been a theme in my life anyway, I realized that was definitely what she was talking about. Um, so I decided to do a deeper dive. I instantly ran to my chart to see if I had Cassandra relevant or powerful in my chart at all. And I didn't. It was like 6 degrees away from my north node, and I was convinced that I was going to, so I was really surprised. Until I kept reading and found that she actually has another name in different versions of the myth, which is Alexandra, which I already knew was 1 degree away from my moon, because I have looked that one up before. And so that made sense. My moon in Aries. So as I was going through, I started just kind of reading more and more of her story and it yeah, and feel free to jump in with the mythology too of her story, but her name translates into helper of mankind, and shining upon men, which I thought was kind of interesting. And so basically, long story short, she had gone to Apollo for she wanted prophetic dreams. She wanted to see things. She wanted the gift of prophecy. Which also on Taylor's album, there was a song called The Alchemy and a song called The Prophecy. And The Prophecy is the song that follows Cassandra. So I was like, this also doesn't seem coincidence that she would have done this either. Um, she's all about her Easter eggs. And so I started reading about how she was a priestess of Apollo and she went and got his attention and he fell in love with her. So he gave her the gift of prophecy with the idea that she would marry him.
The
And
agreement, like
the
they
agreement,
agreed that,
right?
yes.
Yeah. And so she ended up turning him down and running away, and so he cursed her. And basically he let her keep the gift of prophecy, but he cursed her so that no one would believe her prophetic dreams. And so basically they thought she was crazy. And I guess there's basically calling somebody Cassandra is an insult. It's like gaslighting them. It's like saying that you don't believe them.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's a prominent, well, not super prominent, but she's an important character in the Iliad
Mhm.
and the
Mhm.
story of the Trojan War. She's a daughter of Priam and
Mhm.
Hecuba. Sorry if I'm
Yeah.
mispronouncing that name.
I think you're
And
right.
she's known of as the most beautiful of their daughters.
Mhm.
And so with, her prophetic abilities, she's able to see the fall of Troy. She knows that the Trojan horse is a trick. She tells them
Yeah.
that if they let the horse into the city, that Troy will fall. But because of the curse from Apollo, no one believes her. And so she accurately predicts the fall of Troy and then experiences her city falling because no one believed her. And
Mhm.
then in the myth, Ajax comes, she seeks shelter in the
Mhm.
temple of Athena when Troy falls, and Ajax comes and rapes her, which is a common thing that was depicted in art in antiquity, is that scene.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then because he attacks her when she's seeking temple or seeking shelter in the temple, Athena curses the Greek fleet. And that's why in the Iliad, there's like such a big storm where they all like drown on their way home from the Trojan War.
Yeah.
And I'm going to share my screen to share an image of that depiction on a
Yeah.
terracotta um, vase. But here is the image of Cassandra being attacked by Ajax from some art from antiquity. And I also have a woodcut illustration of Cassandra as well. And so you can see her prophesizing the fall of Troy, and
Mhm.
then you can see her being killed at the other side as well. So that's just a little bit of imagery to invoke Cassandra as well. But just like
Yeah.
Lori said, Cassandra is so representative of these misogynistic trends of people not listening to women, not believing women, especially when
Yeah.
you think of the power of intuition and how much we're told that we shouldn't listen to our intuition. We shouldn't trust our intuition, and we're silenced and disempowered. And that's to everyone's detriment. Right. And
Right.
so it's a really, really powerful myth of the importance of listening to women. And also, I think, really fitting. I mean, Lori's the big Taylor Swift fan, but we've all witnessed the way that Taylor's career has
Yeah.
unfolded and how people are just so hard on her. People attack her for so many
Yeah.
different things. I follow a lot of more political Instagram accounts that'll be really
Mhm.
critical of Taylor Swift for being a billionaire, for how much she uses her private jet. We're not going to get into the nuances of that here, or justify it or say it's right or wrong. We're not making that
Mhm.
comment at all, but people are definitely very hard on women when there's a lot of male billionaires out there. There's a lot of men
Yeah.
who are also doing things that are very harmful for the environment, and that doesn't, give Taylor a free pass because she's a woman.
Mhm.
But why are we so hard on women? Why are we so critical of women? And it seems like that's a
Yeah.
big thing of what the album is about and what Cassandra's
Yeah.
myth in particular really points to.
Absolutely. Well, and this is something Taylor has definitely been singing about for a long time. Her song The Man is a really great example of that, and that's on the Lover album, which was from 2019. So, that's definitely an older one. But yeah, I feel like with this particular album, it does feel like she's screaming these themes of, like, "Help me," or, like, "Why are you treating me like this?" Or, "Hey, I'm just a human at the end of the day." And, I think another good example of that is, in I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. It's very similar. She also is basically yelling out, like, the crowds are screaming more and I'm just standing on stage dying, like, and it's so sad. It's such a sad album. Um, but right before she put it out, she put out that puzzle, which basically spit out the word, red herring. And so what I think is really interesting about this album is there's so many people just speculating which boy that this album's about, because everyone loves to basically just say all of her songs are just about a guy she dated or an ex-boyfriend. But it's so much deeper than that. And I think at this point, she makes every song sound like it could be interpreted as a breakup song, if you really wanted it to be, almost just because she like wants it to be relatable to people, but also just to like play into that to be like, how do you know what this is about? And I loved that when I was reading about Cassandra, it just kept saying that she would turn her revelations into riddles, which is exactly what Taylor does. She turns everything into a puzzle for her fans. And there was a lot of speculation with the Cassandra song that it was about Kanye West and Kim Kardashian and how she had basically taken over and she made in the phone call. I don't know the full story of all of it. But, I don't follow any of that kind of stuff that closely, but I do know that she had a phone call that she basically, manipulated and edited, and it wasn't actually Taylor, and she came out and said that, and no one believed her, and that's when she went into hiding, which is why we had the Reputation era and everything, and, a lot of people are speculating that this was about her saying, like, "Hey, I told you so. Like, I told you that they did this to me and nobody believed me back then. How dare you not believe me?" But I feel like it could be just about anything and like you were just saying, it could just be about not believing women in general.
Yeah. And just like the power of literature and poetry for people to assign their own meanings, right? And this is just
Right.
like a very brief tangent, but as
Mhm.
humans, we've evolved so much evolutionary energy into our brains, right? Over time, like we've just put so much energy into like evolving these giant meaning making machines in our head. And so
Yeah.
whether anything has any meaning at all, whatever the meaning is, like there's
Mhm.
just this value in being human and wanting to assign meaning to things,
Mhm.
which is what I say to nihilists. Like, I'm like, whether or not it
Yeah.
actually matters, like the fact that people want it to matter makes it matter, right? And here with
Right.
Taylor's album, it's like there's so much individual meaning and
Right.
interpretation we can all bring to it from our own place.
Yeah, which I honestly think is so cool, especially with a song like this. Because it really could have just been she liked the story and wrote a song about it. But it also has much deeper meaning, and that's the beauty about art, and that's I think what she was trying to do with this album. I mean, it's this album is poetry, and people who don't understand Taylor Swift have been talking a lot about how this album is chunky and unedited and too raw and not like produced enough or overproduced, or people just keep having all these comments, and it's like she literally told us this was just her diary. Like this is just poetry. Like here it is. Um, do what you want with it, basically, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. And then, to tie this a bit more to astrology, if you
Hmm.
want to see if Cassandra is a prominent myth in your birth chart, the asteroids are a really great way to do that. And we've done
Yeah.
several episodes about the asteroids. We'll link a comment down in the show notes to our Asteroids 101 podcast that explains more about how to work with asteroids in astrological interpretation. And we've done several episodes about like Asteroid Underworld Stories and Rhea and
Hmm.
Chariklo and Philomela, if I'm pronouncing her name correct, and all these different mythic beings. And then this episode is about Cassandra. And so there's two
Hmm.
asteroids, as Lori mentioned earlier. There's the Cassandra asteroid, and then there's also the Alexandra asteroid, because Alexandra is another name for for referring to Cassandra in
Yeah.
Greek mythology.
She's two
And
names.
so, well, yeah, exactly. So we'll put her asteroid numbers down below in the show notes as well. And again, Asteroids 101 gives you a lot more explanation of how you can look that up. But as Lori shared, she has
Hmm.
Alexandra very prominent conjunct her moon.
Hmm.
And when I looked up the two asteroids in my chart, Cassandra is not prominent in my chart. She's just floating in Cancer, not really doing much
Hmm.
to any active points in my chart. But I do have the asteroid Alexandra 4 degrees from my ascendant, which is very fitting for my lived experience because
Yeah.
I'm a survivor of child abuse. And when I was growing up,
Mhm.
I asked adults in my life for help and friends and people and was like, my
Mhm.
dad's so terrible to me. And it was mainly verbal abuse. And I grew up well resourced, which is,
Mhm.
privilege and luck as well. But because of those things, people were like, no, no, you're fine. When I was really, truly being abused and no one really listened to me or believed me, my dad
Yeah.
himself gaslit me a ton about what I was going through. And so the experience of, speaking out and asking for help and talking, saying, this is an experience that I am having, this is not okay, and having people not listen to me, not believe
Yeah.
me is, very, very potent in my lived experience. And then I also have other experiences of like in my adult life, bringing things up
Mhm.
and not being listened to and not being believed. And I was reflecting yesterday on whether I wanted to share those like more recent stories in this and just the nature of invoking Cassandra
Yeah.
means that like we might not be listened to, we might not be believed even like through this podcast. And yeah, I just, want to keep those more recent stories more private because of that.
Yeah.
Literally, even when Lori and I were logging on, like I was like, I can't hear you, and we're trying to get the technology set up, and it was actually my fault. And I'm like, you need to fix, like, I can't hear you, and I
I was
wasn't
like, I've
believing her.
pressed everything. I don't know what else I could do.
Which is just, it's crazy. Like, also this morning, we were sending each
Ah.
other voice notes and talking
Mhm.
about how Mars just moved into Aries. And the minute I was listening to the voice note, the second where Lori mentioned Mars in the voice note, I got burned, by some bacon grease when I was cooking breakfast. And so it's just crazy how when you talk about these archetypal energies, these mythic
Yeah.
beings, they show up in your life. And so, I don't feel super comfortable sharing all of my Cassandra experiences because y'all won't believe me because it's
Well,
Cassandra.
and that's actually funny because I have Alexandra at 2 degrees Aries.
Yeah, so she's really activated right now. Mars
She's
literally
very
just moved into
activated right now.
Aries this morning. That is very
Yeah. And my
interesting.
moon is 3 degrees. So yeah, Mars is
That's so
like a degree
crazy.
away from her. So I didn't even think about that when we started this.
Yeah, Mars comes in
Yeah.
and as Mars does, activates things, and here we are. I mean, we wanted to just kind of record this
Yeah, we
episode
wanted
and
to
do it as
push
a
this out
bonus
quickly. Yeah.
because the Taylor Swift album, who's Laura?
Yeah.
The
Uh,
Taylor Swift album just came out. But yeah, those are just some examples of the
yeah.
ways that, the mythology of Cassandra, Alexandra has shown up in my life because the asteroid is prominent.
Yeah.
If you want to share about your prophetic dreams.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've always just had these weird dreams, and for a long time I didn't really understand them, but they would happen. And most of them are very like they don't matter. But I have two different types of dreams and it's very clear. One is just like a dream, like that normal people have. But then the prophetic ones, the ones that end up happening in some capacity, feels like I get like scooped up and put somewhere else for the night and I wake up exhausted. I don't feel like I slept. I feel like I just transported somewhere else and then came back, and it's just such a weird, unsettling feeling. And then whatever I saw in the dream in some capacity ends up playing itself out, typically sometime within the week or two. Um, and so a lot of them for a long time were just like, oh, I ran into this person I hadn't seen in 10 years at Kroger. And then the next day I would run into them at Kroger and I'd be like, that's weird. Or, run into somebody at a park and then I would run into them at the park. And yeah, for a long time it was just stuff like that where it was like I knew this was gonna happen, but it sounds weird to say it because it's not a big thing. But then they started getting bigger. And I don't want to share too many of these stories either because none of them really involve me. I started having dreams about other people, my friends, and like I knew about a friend's car accident and called her about it. And a lot of other way more personal ones that I just won't share because I don't think they would want me to. But just this like waking up and having a knowing and then just calling them and being right, was such a weird feeling because for so many years I feel like I would tell people and they'd be like, "No, that doesn't make sense," until they were the ones on the other side of the dream. And then all of a sudden they believe me because it was their lived experience now. Um, and so I think there's a part of me that's always kind of had to unpack that in believing in myself. Um, and just starting to understand what it means when I have these dreams and what to do with them. What's the best way to bring them up or talk to people because there is always a chance that they're not going to believe you or that they're not going to want to be your friend anymore or like there's so many different ways that it can manifest. So how do you know who you can trust? And yeah, there's just always questions within that. Um and I think for me that's just kind of how that's manifested.
Yeah, that is so interesting. And
Mhm.
I hope this highlights too how when you have asteroids prominent in your chart or just anything archetypally that's activated in your chart, even beyond the
Yeah.
asteroids, like they can show up in multiple different ways for different people. So
Mhm.
my experience with Alexandra has been a lot of, not being believed when I've been abused. And Lori's
Mhm.
experience, especially with Alexandra conjunct your moon in particular, has been more
Right.
connected to prophetic dreams. And I do have a lot of deja vu experiences that
Mhm.
could be kind
Yeah,
of
me too.
prophetic, dreamy. I'm also just so Pisces. So, like, who knows what that is?
Yeah.
But different parts of archetypes can show up at different times in your life, or,
Yeah.
some of the archetype might feel really relevant, some of the myth might feel really relevant, and then some of it might not feel as relevant.
Mhm.
We're not saying that if you have Cassandra or Alexandra prominent in your chart that you're gonna have snakes licking your ears and you're gonna predict the fall of Troy and, all of these things, right? But
Yeah.
parts of the story may
Mm.
feel very relevant in your life if these asteroids are prominent.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also interesting just to note that it's conjunct your ascendant, which is your body. So it's manifested as more like lived experience for you. But it's conjunct my moon, which is conjunct my MC. And um and my MC's in Pisces too. So I do think that there is a part of that because it has focused more on like my career and my outward self and how people see me and how people view me, but also my moon. It's so in like internal and personal and dreams. And it's also interesting that yours is in Libra and mine's in Aries. We have that opposition
Mm,
too.
we do, yeah.
Mhm. Because yours has involved like other people as well. Mine has been
Hmm.
maybe a little more personal, I guess.
Which, Libra is so relational, even if it is my
Yeah.
ascendant. It's the
Right,
other.
right. And Aries is me.
Selfish little baby of the
Little
zodiac.
baby.
Little baby.
My little baby.
I think that's also
Relatable.
because you're a Cancer rising, but
Little baby.
who me?
Oh,
But
I love that.
well, do you have any more to say about? I mean, I'm sure you could have so much to say about Taylor Swift, but do you have
Oh,
any more
there's
to say
always
about
more.
these sorts of things that we've been talking about?
Um, yeah, I mean, I will just say that we did look it up in Taylor's chart. Obviously we don't have her ascendant confirmed, but it looked like I think it was Cassandra was in Leo and Alexandra was in Aquarius. They might have been switched, but they were opposite each other. It didn't seem to be conjunct anything. From what I saw, nothing too prominent. So kind of surprised me that they weren't prominent in her chart. Um, but maybe it was a red herring. I could go back into that. Um, But yeah, and the lyrics too.
Mm,
Yeah, should I share any of the lyrics?
if you want to.
Yeah, well, the chorus, I guess, they just said, so they killed Cassandra first because she feared the worst and she tried to tell the town. So they filled my cell with snakes, and I regret to say, do you believe me now? So it's basically just, and the whole song is like everyone's throwing stones and rioting and screaming, and she's talking about getting the call, and just how everything is like crumbling, crashing down. Um, and they killed her ultimately because she tried to warn them and they didn't heed her warning. Um, and she does die in the story as well. She gets
Yeah, I
killed
think
eventually.
I'm not sure. There's probably different versions of it, but from the
Yeah,
research
there
I
always
did,
are.
it was well, actually, what this was a part of the myth that we didn't share is I think how she actually dies is she dies later with Agamemnon, like she ends up
Yeah,
coming with him, and then when like Clytemnestra and all of that, like Agamemnon gets killed by his wife for
yeah,
having sacrificed his daughter to appease the gods and have the winds go so that they
yeah,
can make it to Troy at the beginning. And then he comes back and there's like this whole, family violence stuff. And yeah,
yeah,
I think that's how Cassandra ends up dying is being murdered with Agamemnon.
yeah. Right, yeah.
But there's
And
multiple versions of the myth, so there might be other versions too where she dies in different ways.
yeah, I think that was the version I was reading as well. So, yeah, but there's always multiple versions of them. Um, but yeah, it's so powerful, I think, in the song, especially when she just says, "You can mark my words that I said it first. In a morning warning no one heard." And she just repeats that a couple times, just like, "I said it first." Like, I've been telling you. And then for that song to end and the next song to be about prophecy. It's so interesting.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sharing those lyrics was good to kind of ground this and how it connects
Yeah.
to Taylor's songs.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
So the moral of the story is listen to women.
Literally, listen to women. Don't
That's
fucking
actually just
talk
why
over
we made this
us.
episode.
Don't take credit. That's the other thing I was thinking with like
Yeah.
I said it first piece too is like how often do women come up with things and then like men just say it and people listen to them so then they take the
Yeah.
credit.
Yeah.
Um yeah,
Yeah. And then
definitely.
yeah, at the end of the song too, she says no one heard, not a single word was heard. And then at the end, the very last line, it says, when the truth comes out, it's quiet. It's so quiet.
Hmm. Yeah. And also our intuition is so important, honoring and respecting all of us,
Yeah.
regardless of
Yeah.
whatever gender you are today or tomorrow or
Yeah.
whatever. I have Mercury on the
Yeah.
ascendant, so I feel like my gender is constantly changing. But yeah, it's like our intuition for all of us is really important and
Yeah. And
we
I
should
think
really honor it.
for me especially, I think I've been realizing recently that I tend to have sleep problems when I am not believing my dreams, or I'm not honoring my dreams, or I'm not paying attention to them. Because I've had a really bad insomnia spout recently. I've like not slept in who knows how long at this point. It's definitely been like a month. Um, and I'm realizing like, and I do have a lot going on in my personal life right now. With the shop and everything, I've been working nonstop and everything has been kind of crazy. But the sleep stuff I think has been because I've almost shut off the intuitive side for a while, and it was like mad at me. um
Mm,
so yeah, I'm trying to ground back in and find that again.
yeah, insomnia is
Yeah.
something I've also really dealt with and is really difficult.
Yeah.
And honestly, that might be a good transition to talk about
Yeah,
what we have going on because
absolutely.
Lori is currently drinking a tea that I blended for her to help her rest. And
It has
I
catnip in it, and my little guy right here keeps aggressively trying to drink it, even though he wouldn't.
and
He doesn't
catnip is an
actually want it.
awesome herb. It's really gentle, really delicious, great for humans as well as cats,
Yeah.
great for children and babies.
Hopefully we'll sleep
Very like
tonight.
makes you sleepy and relaxed, but also makes you kind of goofy, kind of like cats, when cats are like, "Bleh," and then they pass out. So sometimes I'll even drink catnip when I'm like, I don't want to drink alcohol, but I want something that makes me feel a little looser. But I am a trained herbalist who
Mhm.
makes personalized herbal tea blends for folks. And so there's a
They're
link
very
to my
good.
website. Thank you, Lori. There's a link to my website down in the show notes, and you can order teas from me. I also offer astrology readings. I offer herbal astrology readings and asteroid astrology readings and like topic specific astrology readings where we can talk about your natal chart or, work, relationships, whatever's going on in your life. So definitely engage with those if you're interested and just like
Yeah.
reach out on Instagram to either of us. We also have a conversations with the planets Instagram as
Mhm.
well. Yeah, lots of fun stuff going on with that. What do you
Yeah.
have going on, Lori? Like, so much.
Oh, so much. Yeah, well, the first month with the shop went really well. Everything has been fairly smooth. So that's been really good. Just adjusting to being there more. And I also took a lot of gigs and readings and events and all kinds of stuff without thinking about it. So every day that I wasn't at the shop, I was working somewhere else. So definitely gonna not do so much going forward, but it's been really good. It's been really rewarding. I gave my first lecture on the asteroids, which was super exciting. So I do have that recorded, but it's basically everything we talk about in here. So this is more interesting. Um, Otherwise, yeah, I am still doing readings. I offer virtual and in person. Um, I don't know if there's much else to say. I am about to announce and start pushing tarot school. It's going to be, I think, a 6-week program this time. I did 7 last time. It didn't feel like it needed the 7th week. So it's gonna be the 5 Tuesdays in October plus the last Tuesday of September. It will be in person, but it's also gonna be live streamed. So if anybody wants to learn tarot or sign up for that, I also will have the recordings for sale as well, which I do from the last one too. So if you just want that, that's also cheaper. Um, and yeah, other than that, if you're local to Cincinnati, I do have a ton of events and sound baths and healing stuff and a lot of work. I've been really trying to deep dive into my book, so that's been taking up a lot of time. And yeah, I think that's what
That's
I have going
plenty.
on.
That is plenty. And again, all of our contact info is down below. So that's how
Yeah.
you can kind of engage with us and
Mm-hmm.
get tapped into all of this. We'll also both be at Norwalk at the end of the month. And so
Yes.
if you're at Norwalk, please come say hi. I'm so excited. It's like such a great community space.
Yeah.
So fun to be surrounded by lots of astrology nerds. So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. And thanks everyone for listening.